our new friend here, speaking from his laboratory, is in the hills of Montana, right? Is David Yates. Dr. Yates has done all of our work in producing our classes at Buffalo State, all the consulting work that we do. He's getting his, what is this? You're like your 14th master's now, David?
Seems like
is it? Yeah, instructional media, and David also is also going to be designing the quizzes that are going to go with the work that we're doing with Ken Snyder with the neurosurgeons, neurosurgery residents. And so, David, thank you so much for being here. David and I began when everything went online, started teaching our courses, our distance courses online. And David, I think it's probably about 6 months ago when I finally said, I'm not white knuckling this anymore. So and based on our experiences of last week of me not being able to record this, we're going to have David taking care of this. And here we have Dr. Mecca joining us. This is wonderful. So we'll welcome her in. So good morning, Dr. Mecca. Hello, hello. Jennifer, I was just introducing our associate here, David Yates, who's going to be running all of the technical stuff behind this, and he'll be corresponding with you. And so, David, just so happy to have you as part of this, and just so glad to see all of you here this morning. Let me just share my screen with you real quick, and we're going to kind of walk through this. And then this is Dr. Gatewood's morning this morning. So want to welcome you to the Buffalo Society for Creativity and Medical Education. And so we are working on a logo now. My art director's doing a logo. I just kind of grabbed this off I think that's like a water buffalo. It's not quite us. So welcome everyone. Just check and make sure your mobile devices are on stun. And so we're going to record this session, and Dr. Yates will have it give us a link to that. Please share this widely. And if while you're on right now, just mute, but Dr. Gates is going to give us some time for interaction afterwards. So we've got that. Here's a quick howdy. We're going to go around real quick and just let you all turn your microphones on and say hello, because I want us to all know who's here. Because we have a wonderful group of people with us today. And let's see, we've introduced Dr. Yates, and then Dr. Gatewood's going to talk about moonshot medical education. We'll talk a little bit about the next meeting, and Robert's going to probably take one more meeting in October, and then Nagma, I think we're probably looking at maybe November or something. I want to introduce Dr. Nagma Khan, and she's going to be reporting on her work on the relationship between emergency physicians' creative thinking preferences and their risk of burnout. And so those of you that have taken Foresight, this is a real powerful tool to take a look at burnout. And so what I'd like you to do is between now and Dr. Khan's session, we will send you a link to take Foresight. Nagma, I talked to Gerard on this. The originator of Foresight, Dr. Gerard Puccio, will do the session with you. So so he, the fellow that developed the theory that put it all together, will get together with Nagma on this. And just a little bit about Dr. Khan. Nagma is board certified pediatric emergency medicine and associate professor of pediatrics and emergency medicine at Emory University in Atlanta. Dr. Khan has served as division director of a large pediatric emergency medicine group managing 2 emergency departments with a combined volume exceeding 130,000 visits a year. So Nagma also is getting her master's degree in creative studies with us, and was in my class just the last time we were like in person together in 2019. So Nagma, thank you for doing the work that you're doing and sharing the research, and we'll have you with us in a couple of meetings. So I'd like you, if you would, just check your calendars over the next hour or so. If you would just check and see if Thursday, October 20th, 2022 at 0800. Say I've been working with the Defense Department, so 0800. That's like military talk, yeah. So 0800. Is that good for folks? And we will also record the session. So if you're not able to be at this session, we'll record it, and we'll send you the link on that. And please share that widely. And we'll just check with you at the end of Dr. Gatewood's session today. And so without further ado, let me introduce our good, but before we do that, let's just go around real quick. So we'll introduce Dr. Gatewood, but can we just go around and just, I'm just going to call on you, just say where you're from. So Dan Sheehan.
So I'm Dan Sheehan, I'm a pediatric pulmonologist, former associate dean for medical curriculum at UB and now at the University of Rochester.
Thank you, Dan. Dr. Khan, Nagma.
Nagma Khan, I am now a pediatric emergency physician, no longer doing the division director work and happily in the clinical arena and teaching arena. I'm at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia.
Great, thank you, Nagma. Archana.
Hi, I'm Archana Mishra. I'm a pulmonary critical care and sleep specialist. I serve as the clerkship director for advanced medicine and the associate program director for the internal medicine residency program at University at Buffalo.
Thanks, Nagma. Jennifer?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Mecca. I am the director of our Medical Education and Education Research Institute and Associate Dean for Medical Education at the Jacobs School. And I also am the director of our Educational Success Program, which provides support for students on all things related to learning. And we also provide a lot of faculty development as well.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Great to see you. Dean?
So Dean Parmalee, and I, for 21 years until July, was at Wright State University, Boonshaw School of Medicine. I was the medical education dean there for about 18 years and then transitioned into another role and in July quit and have moved to New York City, and in between, what shall I say, adventures and what I'm going to do next.
Love it. Thanks, Dean. Pam?
Good morning. I'm Pam Marcucci. I'm the Vice President for Programs at the Jacobs Institute. The Jacobs Institute is a nonprofit medical device innovation center, and it's located on the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. So we're on top of the Gates Vascular Institute, a vascular clinical facility, and below UB's Clinical and Translational Research Center, so that we have all the steps for the medical device development process right here in one building.
Welcome, Pam. Yeah. Michael?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Leonard. Clinically, I'm a pediatric hospitalist. I'm the Chief Safety Officer and Associate VP for Healthcare Safety at the University of Rochester Medical Center and a professor in the Department of Pediatrics.
Great. Welcome, Michael. And Karen, just welcome. Hi, nice to meet you, new friend. Just give us a little bit of background about who you are.
So I'm Karen Fodor. I'm in the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Rochester and involved in the fellowship training for pediatric pulmonary and the residency PEC for the University of Rochester here and interested in medical education.
Here we go. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for being with us. All right. So on that, let me just introduce our speaker today, Dr. Robert Gatewood, board certified cardiovascular diseases and internal medicine, a clinical associate professor at the University at Buffalo, author of more than 50 presentations and co-author of 2 books, and co-author of a cool white paper that we just released with Dr. Firestein. So, had to add that. So I'm going to stop my sharing, and Dr. Gatewood, it's all yours. Yeah, Dean, you got a question there.
Well, not a question, but I'm like, oh my, the 2 people in Rochester. I was a medical student there in the reign of Robert Haggerty, and Elizabeth McInerney was my preceptor for years, and we until recently we've stayed pretty close through the years as I've moved on.
I love it. I love those connections. That is so terrific, and that's what this is about.
Yeah, and the other thing is, for my back in those days, in the arcade, in the ancient days, my clinical skills, I forget what we called it, but the clinical skills group in the 3rd year, 4 students and a preceptor. I had Dr. Engel for my preceptor for that, who invented or first published on the biopsychosocial model.
There we go. So
yeah,
thanks, Dean. So Robert, over to you. So please, everybody, welcome our good friend, Dr. Robert Gatewood. Yay, round of applause for Robert. So all yours, Dr. G. Here we go.
All right. Well, good morning. It's an honor to speak this morning to such an elite group here. So as Roger mentioned, I was going to present everything at the same time, but I broke it into two pieces, so it'll be in two parts. Today will be sort of the 10,000-foot view of what I call medical education moonshot, and then the second we'll get down into the weeds. So let me share my screen here with you. Can everybody see the slides all right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just tell you a little bit more about myself before I get started. I always like to tell people I'm the eldest of 13. So I was taking care of my brothers and sisters, and I think that's why I got into medicine, as I was always taking care of people. I was born in San Francisco, but really grew up in Washington, D.C. And I went to Holy Cross undergrad. I went to Georgetown Medical School. So I'm Jesuit trained. I did go to Rochester. My Rochester connection is that's where I did my 3 years of cardiology training. And I've been married for 52 years and have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. So that's sort of the highlight of my life right there. So I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about a project that I did back in 2005. I wrote this white paper, Heart, Hospital, and Global Vascular Center, a cardiologist's perspective. It's this right here. This is the original. And the idea was to centralize all of tertiary care onto one campus. And that way we could pool all the resources in the region and really take advantage of, all the fine minds and also prevent duplication of equipment and services that were not as cost effective as possible. It also would allow us to be not just specialized, but super specialized. So that was the idea, and to kind of coordinate cardiovascular care for the Western New York region. And after I wrote the paper, I started to talk to people about it, and I was so fortunate that that when I talked to Dr. Nick Hopkins, who at that time was head of the neurovascular program at Kaleida, he actually had the same idea and was 2 steps ahead of me. He had already enlisted Jeremy Jacobs, who is head of Delaware North. And I won't get into what Delaware North is, but Jeremy Jacobs has very deep pockets, and he's very loyal to Buffalo. And he was agreed with Dr. Hopkins to back this idea of building a global vascular center. Believe it or not, it sounded impossible at that time that we would be able to do that in Buffalo, but in 2012, the doors opened. And I only mention that is, I'm going to mention this again because I want to draw a comparison to what I believe we can do with medical education. So this was in the white paper I had talked about, if you look down at the bottom here, the Heart and Vascular Center. But that was only one piece of the puzzle. The idea was to create a whole complex of tertiary care in one center. We had the cancer center already with Roswell. Children's Hospital was located on another camp, was not on the campus. We did have orthopedics, although it was spread out. But the idea was to bring all of the centers of excellence together as one tertiary care complex. And then we also added 4 pillars to that. One was the University of Buffalo. The idea was to bring the School of Medicine and other health-related programs onto the campus. Research down at the bottom, both academic, bench research and clinical research. On the right-hand side, health-related businesses, and then at the top, education for nurses and healthcare professionals. So this was building what was called the hub. The spokes were the outlying hospitals and community physicians. So they were all to be linked in as primary and secondary care into the hub. So when we put it all together, it looked like this hub and spokes model here. So the idea was really to kind of coordinate everything and get everybody rowing in the same direction. So taking that model and plugging it into the medical education moonshot, it is something I'd like to present to you this morning and get your feedback and see if this resonates with you. So again, it's building a medical hub. And again, the 4 sort of main pillars are the medical school, the medical, pediatric, surgical, and psychiatry residency programs, nursing school, and then nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or physician associate programs. So sort of building that as sort of the core of the hub. Then around that, adding other specialties, psychology studies for psychologists, and sociology studies for social workers. As Dean mentioned, the biopsychosocial part of medicine is emerging as a very important approach to patients these days. So those are 2 very key elements. And then down at the bottom, ancillary healthcare worker training and medical technician school training. So, you've got your x-ray techs, your sonographers, lab techs, your MAs, all the people that work and contribute to the team, the healthcare team. And then if we want to expand it even further, we can go to dentistry, physical therapy, and rehab medicine, pharmacy, and then quality and dissemination and implementation medicine. So those are all, again, key pieces to really completing that whole medical education hub. And then adding those two pillars, as we did with the tertiary care hub. At the top, we have healthcare administration, government. On the left, philanthropy, and then at the bottom, insurance companies. So these are all also pieces that are important in the total outlook of this hub. So when we compare the hub with the tertiary care complex, you can see that it's quite similar. Then if we add the spokes, it looks like this. So you have the medical education hub in the center, and then that has communications with the community healthcare teaching programs, community hospitals, community physicians, businesses, research entities, community psychology and social work, sociology programs, schools anywhere from pre-K to 12 to colleges, and then community healthcare services. So it's really acting as sort of a neural network where the hub is kind of the brain, the computer behind the whole thing, and then these are all nerves that extend out and connect with one another. And it's connecting in all different directions. It's not just connecting, say, the hub with community hospitals or the hub with community teaching programs, but community hospitals with teaching programs and community physicians with community teaching programs. So it's really all-encompassing neural network. So again, comparing that to the tertiary care complex, it's basically the same principle of connections. So believe it or not, this is just part one, and it's really to give you kind of an overview of the hub and spokes with it's sort of the looking at the skin and the skeleton. Part two will be looking at the organs, which are really the most important. And those will include, we'll be looking at some of the key stakeholders. And of course, the whole community is a stakeholder because we're talking about healthcare and medical education in Western New York. But these are all the key stakeholders. You've got, everything from physicians to government. So we will talk about how we get all of these different groups sort of rowing in the same direction, and really taking this on as a community mission. And then lastly is also talking about the goals and see how we can achieve these goals. And they go anywhere from quality to care process, to cost efficiency, to teaching and research, to access and outreach. And of course, Roger, I have to include creativity and innovation. So these are basically, and these are, as you will see, some of the key goals we had with the Gates Vascular Institute. And this is the strategic plan that I presented in 2011, which we'll be comparing with that. And I'll leave you with this last quote by Greta Thunberg, who said, to do your best is no longer good enough. We must do the seemingly impossible. And if you know, she's the Swedish activist, and she said this when she was addressing the European Parliament about tackling climate change. And I believe we're facing some very difficult times here in healthcare, much like we are in climate change. We've got a nursing shortage. We have, they're predicting that we're going to be 120,000 physicians short by the year 2034. There are nights when we can't get enough X-ray techs. The list goes on and on, and we have healthcare workers that are burning out, that are going on, that are threatening striking. So we're in a bit of a crisis here, and I think we need to get ahead of that. And one way is through medical education and really bringing it up and to a really high level and making it visible to the whole community, and taking advantage of all the resources that we have, and not because I get a sense that it's a bit fragmented now, and if we could just sort of get it more organized, coordinated, and get people collaborating, we could do a knockout job here in Western New York. I think we have all the pieces. We just have to put them together. So I think I will end here, Roger, and open it up to comments and questions.
Absolutely, Robert. And the idea behind today was Robert's going to get us started on this. We'll have a conversation about it. When we meet on October 20th, we'll do the second part of this, have a conversation. Then we'll kind of decide from there if the next session we do with Dr. Khan and Dr. Puccio around burnout and the Foresight instrument. But questions, comments, reactions to Robert. Robert, thank you for this first off. And yes, absolutely. Thanks for that. And let's just let's open it up. And do you want to stop your screen sharing then, Robert? We'll just
Yeah.
No, that's okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so comments, questions, reactions, and the beautiful thing about this is we have this recorded, so we don't have to take copious notes. But open your mics and let's talk.
All right. Can I first thank you again? Love your vision. Much, much, much needed. Can I have one suggestion? Could you please add humanities and arts to it? Because that's one aspect of it that is not really woven into our medical education, and it is needed.
I'm sorry, Archana, what did I miss?
I said humanities and art. I know you've included parts of it, but I think it deserves its own little place there.
Okay, absolutely.
Yes, yes.
So Roger, it's a wonderful disruptive model. And what I mean by that is we tend to think of three pillars being clinical, research, and education. And, you know, research is the one upon which institutions like UB is really trying to build their reputation, and clinical is where the funding comes into it. So it's disruptive in trying to change how people think of it. Your thought of putting the medical education as the hub.
Yes. Well, I think that it's really all encompassing, Dan. It does include all three of those pillars, medical education, and perhaps this will be borne out when I go to part 2, because we do talk about bringing in clinical and academic together. If that's what you were, if that was your comment, or maybe I missed.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed your point.
Yeah, I think what it's disruptive because we tend to think of separate pillars. And,
Oh,
and they don't necessarily communicate all the time. They don't always connect at that. And, medical education sometimes only becomes important at the time of accreditation or reaccreditation. And so to really put it at the hub is a very interesting way to project a future system.
okay.
I'm wondering, Dr. Mecca, I know you're going through some redesign on this. Is this helpful? Is this for, as you're looking at this, does this provide some insight to your work and curriculum?
I was just actually putting something through the chat quick because.
Oh, okay. Oh, you have to leave, right? Okay, yeah.
Well, before you leave though, I'm hoping that you are the Dr. Nick Hopkins in this whole thing, Dr. Mecca, because you've already started, and I can't wait to get to part 2, because that goes really down to what you are doing at at your level at the medical school. So I hope that we can kind of compare notes when I do part 2, because really what we did, and it's so interesting how the Gates Vascular Institute and how we got people together will really mirrors what I believe would work in medical education. And I bet dollars to donuts that you probably have already started this, but and it's incorporated in your revamping of the curriculum. So I'm really anxious to kind of compare notes here, because I think it will be very, very interesting, and then get sort of some comments from our other society members here. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope we have the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think part of, what we've started to do a little bit just initially, and similar to what we did at my previous institution, is trying to find some of those common areas where we could be working together and developing different things together and moving forward with that, rather than trying to force fit some, necessarily new projects. And so if you think about something like, one example would be some of the anti-racism and bias training that we've been wanting to do for our faculty, but then also that's what's required in the hospital systems as well. So rather than everyone creating their own, what are the opportunities to create one? What are those shared competencies that we're looking for? And it also obviously is a cost savings for people as well.
That's exactly
Yeah.
that's exactly the point of having this hub and spokes thing. And I would even expand it further. We have, nursing schools that would benefit from that. We have PA and nurse practitioner schools, all of those, and creating a really excellent, one excellent program. And as you know now, so much of teaching and learning is done online. We will talk about the hybrid model, which I think is really important. But for some things, there's so much you can learn and share online as well. And having a library that people can access, again, it reduces that redundancy and benefits everybody. So I think that's the way to go.
And
so
the
I'm
diversity
looking forward to
across
talking
it.
about that more
Yes.
when we get to part
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
And the diversity across it'd be fantastic. So thanks, Dr. Mecca. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention is,
Yes.
Dr. Gatewood, what a privilege it was to hear from you. I mean, working in the place that Nick's vision brought to life, the Jacobs Institute, and seeing the cross-pollination that happens downstairs in the GVI and the incredible patient care that comes from the specialties learning from each other. So thank you very much. One thing I wanted to throw out there is we do quite a bit of training for industry. So industry engineers, industry marketing folks, the idea being that get them out of their siloed offices where they're creating new medical technologies and bringing them into the clinical space so they can see the unmet needs. The second part of that is how technologies are changing so quickly today. So physicians, are constantly needing, to educate themselves. And I see it all the time here to keep up with the new technologies. And I'm just wondering about the role that industry can play in this education hub, certainly in a self-serving way with funding, but also, with some of their training and their innovation opportunities in terms of technology development.
That is a fantastic question, and I'm so glad that you asked it, because the first part that you just saw, one of the purposes of that was to break down the silos horizontally. So as you know, the GVI was created and designed so that there is interaction between cardiologists, neurosurgeons, neurologists, vascular surgeons, cardiac surgeons, interventional radiologists, all working in the same space. And to Dr. Hopkins' credit, this was really one of his main goals with the GVI, was to get that cross-pollination, as you mentioned. That was critical. And in fact, you may or may not know this, but Dr. Hopkins learned how to do carotid stenting from the cardiologist. So that right there is an example of how breaking down those silos and learning from each other is so important. Part 2 talks about vertical integration and breaking down the silos vertically. So we're doing it both ways, vertically and horizontally. And I'm glad you brought that up, because yeah, that's one of the key features of this whole thing is breaking down those silos. And industry is one of them, bringing those people in. So yes, thank you for that comment. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Pam. Yeah. Others, comments?
Can you define the concept of the hub for me? Exactly what do you foresee the hub doing? Is it like a core computer that helps develop curriculums or develops a vision or a mission for the teaching component?
Yeah.
How do you foresee this working?
Yeah, well, I think the first step is to get a listing of basically all the programs that are out there. And we have an informatics, one of the best informatic programs around here in Buffalo. So I think if we could get all that information together, then we can start to align all the different players and stakeholders so that, again, we're both coordinated and collaborating together. For example, you may have a nursing school, and you may be able to supplement, the hub may be able to supplement some of the teaching, and without any extra cost, because they already have some of those programs, available. And again, I will see that there's going to be vertical integration. So hopefully we'll have doctors and nurses and other health professionals around the table at the same time, talking about either programs or patients. So that's kind of the idea. But yes, we have to get sort of an overview of what the resources are that we have around the area. In fact, I think Dr. Snyder, who's not with us today, but he's looked at some of the healthcare services in Buffalo, and there's something like 1,600 of them. So yes, we have a lot of those programs, and to make those available to one another is another way that the medical education hub can help facilitate that so that people know what is available.
Yeah, great.
I think, now medicine is a team sport. And if they learn together, they'll end up working better together. And I think that that's one of the, for me, is such a valuable sort of outcome from this vision.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is, I keep telling my students that that medicine is a team sport, and that's part of this whole, as you'll see in part 2, is the way the medical education moonshot will hope is designed to do, is to create that culture of teamwork and amongst healthcare providers. And it's also been shown to be helpful in burnout, as Dr. Khan probably knows. When you work as a team, you're spreading that stress out amongst and you feel like you've got some support, you've got a support group around you because you're working on this together, as opposed to working alone. You're much more likely to suffer from burnout. So it can be an advantage in that way, in that aspect as well.
Robert, I just also would like to kind of build on what Ken Kamiga spoke with us about last time we were together, the whole idea of continuous improvement. And then, of course, from my perspective and our perspective, which kind of brings us together, that whole creative problem solving process that ties us together. So when people get into teams, they've got a process to use, they have a method that they can generate those ideas. And so that we're not operating business as usual, whoever has the loudest voice wins. And that was one of the things, Dean, that we talked about down with Brenda and Colleen at Moonshot, because my daughter went through medical school down there, and they used a facilitative approach where students got into groups and stuff and then presented their work back. And the challenge around that was, and I talked to my daughter about this, was there wasn't an overlying process in there that really taught them how to work together better. So they operated kind of default the way they used to. And I guess I would say to just kind of join that as a thread that brings it across is just this kind of basic creativity process that has kind of brought us all here together on that. So just a word on that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to backtrack to something else that Pam brought up. And that's about how quickly technology and medical knowledge is advancing. This is something, again, I tell my students. In 1950, medical knowledge was doubling every 50 years. In 1980, when I started practice, it was doubling every 7 years. And in 2020, it was doubling every 73 days. So it's incredible how fast things are going, and to keep up. And that's why having why a medical education hub is so important, and to create and to use creativity and innovation in helping us keep up with that and utilizing it in the best way. So there's so many different facets to this. But yeah, that's one that's just it's kind of like Moore's law in technology. Things are just rising exponentially.
And I think one important facet of this is how our medical students are learning now. This generation learns in a very different way from the way we used to learn. So providing them that information in bite-sized social media, Twitter type pieces probably goes a longer way, as it does for our patients and their guardians. Long written discharge instructions in the ER Oh my God, I tell the residents, if you write a 2-page discharge instruction, they're not going to read it, put it in bullet
Mhm.
points. Maybe you'll get a chance that they'll read it, put it in electronic media form. They may read it actually. So we've got to start changing the way we do medical education to accommodate for that as well. And sometimes I feel like we're all working on different specialties. And in emergency medicine, we experience this more than I think any other area because we actually come in contact with every single specialty nearly every day. Everybody's working off a different playbook, how they're going to manage that patient, how they're going to communicate with you, what their admission criteria are going to be, what kind of labs they want. I mean, all the psychosocial needs of the patient from their perspective, from our perspective, plays such a big role. And yet we're all working off different playbooks. So when you illustrate what you're saying is the hub actually it just pictorially makes you want to come together, taking away everybody's egos and saying we'll work together for a common good, which in the end is that patient. It's not our careers, it's not our growth, it's our patients. So I really like the concept.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
I think this blends into, Pam, some of the things that we've been talking about as far as, how to deliver this education, and Nagma, some of the work that we did, and Robert, that we did with accelerated learning, when the way we teach the classes at Buff State using that model of the involvement in accelerated learning, and then also those bite-sized pieces, some of the work that I've been doing with, the stuff that we're going to be doing with Dr. Snyder on 9 little quick modules on creativity, and then some in-person learning and all of that kind of stuff. It's and so that you can consume it on your phone while you're waiting in line at Tim Hortons, for coffee. So so all exciting stuff like that. Yeah.
To just follow up on Dr. Khan's comments, they're so important. I see medical education definitely getting away from those hour-long lectures, because your retention is it's gone after 20 minutes at the most. And secondly, the idea of the hub, as you alluded to, Dr. Khan, it's actually sort of the lighthouse. It's kind of the guiding light. So again, it's bringing all the ideas together and kind of coalescing them, and then coming up with like the best approach to different things and the best way of doing things, and helping physicians and researchers, sort of cut to the chase, I guess, and be and also have some sort of uniformity in the way we do things.
Looks like Michael's got a question there.
Well, last thing I did mention on that hub, and we'll probably bring this up again. We talk a lot about quality. I know Ken's not here, but there's another piece to quality that's now sort of coming of age, and that's called dissemination and implementation. And Dr. Khan, you probably know this, that all of you do, that when a study comes out, a groundbreaking study, and it shows that this is the way we should be treating patients, there's a big gap between when it's published and out there and when it actually gets into clinical practice. There's a big lag. People, doctors, we tend to be, we don't like a lot of change. We like what we're doing. And when something's different, we sometimes hesitate. We're sort of risk averse, which is good in a way, but this is really not a risk. And we get into patterns, and it's hard to break those patterns. And so dissemination and implementation is a way of sort of working on shortening that gap, decreasing that gap between when we have good knowledge that this is the best way, and then getting it into actual clinical practice down in the trenches. And that's where I think maybe the medical hub could potentially help.
the image of the lighthouse. I love that image. So yeah, Michael, let's go over to you and then to Archana. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. No, so first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. This was fascinating, and my head's kind of spinning trying to wrap my my mind around this. So thank you so much. Just a few thoughts. Dr. Gatewood, I'm so glad that you brought up the whole concept of implementation science, because as we were talking, the question that kept going through my head is, what is the burning platform? This is a phenomenal model. Anybody who has any vision, who's been in medical education, knows we need to change, we need to move in a different direction, but not everybody necessarily shares that vision. So how do we get all of our colleagues who don't see the need for this to see that need and to kind of get them on the bus earlier versus later? Because like you said, when small things take a long time to infiltrate, large things like this are that much more difficult. One of the comments you made before really kind of struck a nerve, pun intended. I always worry a little when I see hub and spoke models, because I worry that the spokes don't talk to each other. And that's always a risk, because the potential is that everybody on the spokes feel they need to go through the hub. And I have a good colleague and mentor who actually his office is right next door. We have this argument all the time. Many of you may know in quality improvement, in the literature, we talk a lot about fractal models, where you do something small in a discrete area, let's say a unit, and then if that works, then you expand it to maybe a service, then you expand it to the hospital, and you expand it to the system. But the whole concept of a fractal model is that you picture a tree. The leaf has to go to the twig, has to go to the branch, has to go to the trunk. Well, from my perspective, the leaf should, leaves should be able to talk to each other. They shouldn't have to go up and down to be able to do that. So that's why I love the fact that you mentioned neural networks, because that's, I think, really such a better strategy. Everybody is linked to everybody. And the nice thing about that is that really does help flatten that hierarchy. It does give people the ability to learn from each other in the moment without having to go through, all these huge processes to do that. And I think it just, now some nodes in that neural network can be bigger than other nodes. That makes sense. But, again, everybody being able to connect to everybody. And that is a really hard picture to draw, by the way. It's easy you almost need a 3D diagram to be able to do that. But I think conceptually that is such a strong model. So I think that's actually what you're describing. But, again, when I first heard hub and spoke, I was a little nervous.
Well, I gotta commend everyone on their comments and questions. You're really going right to the root of the thing. Two things. One is, yes, the arrows that you see, first of all, they're bi-directional. And I wanted to put the arrows going everywhere, but then the slide looks like, it doesn't work. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's connecting everyone. So yes, and you'll see in part 2 how we actually, I'll tell you right now, because we, went before 2011, when we had cardiology, group, say, the EP guys were meeting, they'd all meet, just the EP guys, and they'd talk about what projects they were program that they wanted to build or whatever. But those weren't very effective, and they took a long time because administration wasn't there and so forth. So what we did, and starting in 2012, was when the EP group met, there were physician representatives, administration representatives, IT, nursing, quality. We had a number of different, people from different, perspectives coming in. So when we talked about a project, we weren't doing it in a silo. We were doing it together with everyone, so that we didn't have to come back or take the project to, administration, or take it to quality, or take it to nursing. Everyone was at the table at the same time and everybody got their input. So if things had to be adjusted, we do it right there. So that's kind of the neural network at down at the grassroots level.
Yeah. And Roger, I just have to tip my hat. Your Captain Kirk slide there. For those folks into the next generation, Mr. Data was all about the neural networks.
Got it, baby. Got it, baby. Yeah, love it, love it. Archana, let's go over to you, and then we'll close with that and look at our next session. So thank you, Michael. Archana, Dr. Mishra, please.
Love that neural network, but I just wanted to add Dan's comment about it being a disruptive model. In a way, it resonates with me because I feel it's time, and again, not to sound like a broken record, but that humanities component in medicine needs to be emphasized. And I think this might be that opportunity as we design that, the soft skills, the lifelong learner, which sort of is important given how information, as you mentioned, Robert, is expanding. So our way of approaching patients, our way of teaching our students needs to have those quote unquote soft skills ingrained. And this might be the opportunity to give it the emphasis that so far it has lacked.
No, I totally agree. I have a number of mottos for my students, but the first motto I teach them is lead with empathy, treat with compassion. And that really is part that comes from the art and culture side. I was, oh shoot, I had something else I was gonna say. Yeah, maybe it'll come to me. Yeah.
So with that in mind, so we're going on an hour here. And so I just wanted to check, is Thursday, October 20th, 2022 at 8 o'clock a good time? Okay, great. So we'll Robert, will that work for you, sir?
I have to check. I'm giving a talk remotely at 8:30 in the morning. I don't know if it's Thursday morning or Friday morning. It's
okay.
The talk, it's a big international cardiology and endocrine meeting in Alexandria, Egypt. But I'll be giving it from Buffalo.
It's just so extraordinary, the stuff we can do. I love it. So, okay. So Robert, when you get that, we'll send out a link and information. And let's see, Dean is going to be in Newport. Okay. So we'll keep you on the loop for that. We'll send it out to the same folks. Our good Dr. Yates here will, from this lab. I love the lab outfit you're wearing there, Dr. Yates. That's Dr. Yates will send
Roger,
out.
we'll use the same exact Zoom. Okay, I'll resend out a calendar invite, but for all these, we'll use the same Zoom information. Okay.
Great. Thank you, David. Thank you. And so we'll just check on the dates. We'll get the dates to you, and we'll look to be either Thursday or Friday in October. And if you can't, and as Dan is doing here, get this out to your friends, and we'll send the link out to you for all of our friends that weren't able to be with us. And away we go. So thank you, everyone. So
thanks
great
for
stuff.
all your comments, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
for
And
that.
Robert and David, if you want to just stay on for just a quick minute, Robert and David, just stay on for a quick minute, and we'll be all set. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Dan, I'll see you in a couple weeks at the market. Nagma, so nice to see you. Dean, good luck in New York. Michael, Rochester. So let's just keep making it happen, guys. This is great stuff. So thanks, everybody.